Hey there everybody, it's Carpo. I figured I would let you look at the gorgeous sky behind me rather than my ugly mug. I just wanted to say a couple words about entitlement, and I'm sure everyone will relate to one extent or another, but I'm really irritated by entitled people. And I have a live and let live motto, but that doesn't that doesn't include the fact that I need to, anywhere I see negativity I need to make it positive, and anywhere I see positivity I need to recognize it. And that's kind of like the path of truth, the path of love, the path of positivity, and I try to follow that. But I'm the guy who speaks up. I'm that guy who talks shit when there's something going wrong. I'm the guy who honks his horn when somebody's doing something dumb instead of closing my eyes to it. Or I'm that kind of guy who walks into a room and when somebody's, being loud and belligerent, I confront them and tell them, they should chill out and get out. Not in a violent way, but in a way that I don't, or if a person's yelling at their kids or something, that's a serious issue. You see somebody yelling at their kids and being harsh in public, a lot of people would say, hey, that's none of your business. But it is my business. It's everyone's business. If a person's just, scolding a child, that's different. But if a person's obviously abusing the child, it's, somebody needs to step in. I don't like people who act entitled. I don't like people who weave in and out of traffic, and that's what kind of set me off today. There's this asshole in front of me, cut me off right before the exit, and then he just, and then the cars were stopped. I mean, he wasn't going anywhere. The whole freeway was going like 10 miles an hour, like always. And he proceeded to not only cut me off, but then when it got to the part where the white line started to merge, he cut across both white lines and then across two lanes, right into the center lane without a turn signal. And he was about 3 or 4 car lengths in front of me, and he proceeded to do that over and over. And he must have changed lanes 15 times within 2 miles, without turn signals. I mean, this fucker was just being a douchebag, and I see these guys all the time. They're everywhere. And I know Portland's not as bad as some places, so thank God that I'm not in LA or something, but it's the sense of entitlement that these people seem to have. And the reason why I use driving is because it's a perfect example. Same thing happens with people who think that they can get in front of you in line, or the people who are in a hurry and they're more important, or the people who will take 2 and leave you with none, And I guess a better example would be the person who, what kind of a person are you in a situation of 3? If you are with 2 people and you acquire 3 of something, what will you do? Will you give the other person 2 and you 1, or will you give yourself 1 and the other person 2? I've never really thought about that until just now. I mean, that kind of popped into my head, and that's a good way to look at it. Are you a 1 or a 2 person? And I always try to be the 1 person, and I've been the 2 person in the past. I don't like to be selfish, because that's entitlement. That makes the person feel like they are more entitled to something than the other person. And when you're working on laws of karma and nature, natural law, there's certain rules to follow and guidelines. And when you act entitled, you're stepping on other people's toes because you perceive yourself as better. And it's really easy for people to assume that they're better because they went to college, or because they have a better job, because they have a bigger house, a nicer car. But in reality, when you strip that all away, what's left? The values of a person. And even if your values are better than another person, you should never act entitled just because you have better values. You shouldn't think I'm a better person because of that, or else you have no values. That's the whole point. Is you've missed the point if your values mean that you take more for yourself because of it. So that leaves me in kind of a qualm. It's been a big issue. I sometimes wonder, how do you know when it's okay to take for yourself? How do you know when it's okay to, you say you find something on the side of the road, but, I'm trying to think of a good example, but I really can't. How do you know when it's okay to treat yourself and to, be the best you can to yourself? And it's really hard to tell, because there's so many different issues that we confront on a daily basis. And then there are also the issue of whether it's visible or non-visible. And karma is like that. A lot of people like to do nice things for people, but they can't stand to do it unless they're recognized. Like the person who says, "Oh, I donated this to this place." You know, everybody wants to be recognized for your good deeds. I mean, that's just how it is. I do. And when you're not, you know, I often may say tell someone, you know, about it. Just out of, you know, without even thinking about it. And I realize after analyzing myself that that's because I'm trying to gain credit for it. So I've learned to be humble over the years and try not to gain credit for things. I mean, I've been praised enough in my life for things that I've done. People have said, "Good job" to me enough. I mean, and I feel really bad for those who haven't had that, because it's a very important thing. Because when you've been told you do well, you have two options. You can either take the route of, okay, I've been told I'm great, and let it go to your head, and then you become an entitled person. Or use that I don't know, that awesome feeling you get to better yourself even more, so you can gain more credit. And one thing I could say about that is, when a person really tries hard to be a good person, then it's really hard for them to really get credit for anything, because people already see them as a good person, so it takes a lot for them to get recognized for something even better. You know what I mean? If you're a giving person and you're always donating to charity, and then you keep donating to charity, nobody's going to think, "Oh, you're great for doing this." They're just going to get used to you. And so, I should say, let's see, how do I word this? A person who gets praise often about something will always have to do something greater to get more praise. If you make a piece of furniture, you know, and you're like, "That's a great chair, you did a great job," you know, but if you keep making them, the same people aren't going to keep saying that over and over. "Wow, great chair," because it's the same chair. They've already seen that part of you, and they're looking for something else that you've done. On the other hand, we also have the person who never does anything right, the person who's totally screwed up their life and is always doing things wrong, and they decide to quit doing drugs. Like, let's say quit doing coke or heroin or something, and they get all this praise for quitting. You know, that's because that's a huge step for them. Or if they but let's say they make a smaller step, like they acknowledge their problem. That might even be enough to get them praise. Whereas a person who is aware, if they acknowledge their problem, people will say, "Yeah, what's new?" I don't think this is coming across right in that part, so I'll move on. The entitled folks, those out there who are cutting through traffic, and cutting in line, and taking things that aren't theirs, people who steal, people who lie, cheat, there's a huge issue with entitlement on people who make a living off of other people's losses. And that's an issue that I don't really want to get into too much, because I don't want to offend anybody. But there are plenty of jobs out there that are based on a company acquiring money through the misfortune of others. And war would be a perfect example, but beyond that, I'm thinking more along the lines of, say, a stockbroker, or a person might not realize if their stock is gaining, let's say, it's ultimately at the loss of, other people, generally. Maybe not a lot, maybe just a small amount to a bunch of people. But in the end, the money comes from somewhere. If a person, let's say, has more stuff than they need, way more stuff than they need, they might think that they deserve that. But it all comes from somewhere, and eventually someone takes a loss, so one person could be greater. If a person's job is to make, let's say, well, let's not go into details. We all have shitty jobs. I mean, one way or another, we've all had shitty jobs, I should say. I love what I do, but it doesn't mean that I love every minute of it, or every part of it. There's always going to be an aspect to what we do that we don't like. Well, that's okay. That's just life, But the people who say that you're not supposed to love work, it's like, well, really? Why not? Natural law says that, yes, we should like everything we do. We should be not happy all the time, but content in the things that we do to the point where we don't worry ourselves over it. And to sum it up, we really need to all look at ourselves when we do something, whether somebody else is losing out because of it. And the entitled person who decides that they want to outdo somebody else or take more than somebody else ought to look at their lives, because I will say from my personal standpoint that I feel better when I take one and give two than when I take two and give one. Always. Doesn't matter what it is. So you have the choice between material or spiritual gain. So material gain will always disappear in the end, and spiritual gain will never go away. So become a one person. Become one. Namaste. I love you all.